Thank you, Barry. I appreciate that prayer. I will need help this morning. I don't know, when you were in school and you had a paper due, when did you remember to do the paper? The night before. Man, I had to scramble and get the thing done. Well, Keith asked me last Sunday to teach his class, and I said, sure, I'll do it. And I remember my wife reminded me yesterday. I said, uh-oh, I better get busy. So I'm picking up, and he wanted me to continue with this, and we will get through this as far as we can, and then Keith will finish this out. I was trying to remember where we were because it's been a couple of weeks, and I'm over 70, so I did the best I could with this. But I know that we are striving to grow in our faith, and by growing in our faith, doing that with adding Christian virtues to our faith. And this then will draw us nearer to God. And that's the whole point that Keith has been making. And then his point was, how do we do that? How do we apply these Christian virtues to our life to help us grow? Previous virtues covered in the lesson: faith, virtue, knowledge, temperance, patience, godliness. And I believe, as I started preparing my lesson, I was preparing to cover brotherly kindness, and I realized that I believe Keith was doing that. One of you younger guys helped me remember, right? Brotherly kindness, he did go over that. Because when I was going over it, I started thinking, I remember this. So we began in this. But I'm going to begin talking about brotherly kindness, because that will lead us into what we're adding to brotherly kindness. And these two are connected very closely together in a different way, but one leads to the other, and we need to understand that as we grow. So in 1 Peter 1, verse 7, we read, to godliness, brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness, love. In this context, or in this text, brotherly kindness is the word Philadelphia. I guess you guys have heard of Philadelphia. William Penn established a city named Philadelphia. And I don't know if you're aware of the walking purchase. Did anybody here know about the walking purchase? You ever heard of that? The walking purchase? Some of you guys in school? The walking purchase was when William Penn created a treaty with what we call today the Delaware Indians. There's several tribes, about three different tribes of Indians, met with the tribal leaders and told them that we will walk a day and a half on this land. And everything, all the land that we can walk in a day and a half, you sell to us, and they agreed to the treaty. Of course, the Native Americans, when they walked through the forest, they walked leisurely. And they assumed William Penn would do the same thing, right? But he didn't show brotherly kindness to these Native Americans, so he wasn't kind. He had first the forest cleared for the areas that he wanted. And then he contracted the fastest runners and the most enduring runners among the Quakers, because they were Quakers. And they set out on that day, and they ran through that cleared forest in the directions they needed to until they had covered 1,200 square miles. Now, this is a lot more than what the Native Americans thought they were agreeing to. So that's the area that became Pennsylvania. Well, I think part of that may have been Delaware at one time, became Pennsylvania, and or New Jersey, I'm not sure. But anyway, eventually he did establish the city, and he called it Philadelphia as an honor, as his desire for brotherly love among the Quakers. So this is the word, brotherly kindness, Philadelphia. And it applies to a love of a brother or sister, brothers and sisters, or familial, family members. But it's, in our congregation, it applies to our brothers and sisters in Christ. To love, it's the love which Christians have that cherish each other as brethren. And so that's the love we should have, the brotherly kindness. So that's a natural love, isn't it? To love in a familiar relationship, to love your companions, to love those close to you. That's easy. That should be easy. Sometimes it's not, but because of the way we behave for one another, but it should be. We should be drawn, and we should love each other because of who we are. And so that's the phileo, or Philadelphia love, is we love you because of our relationship with you, because of who you are, and because you're our friend. You're my brother. You're my sister. Romans 12, verse 10, be kindly affectioned to one another with brotherly love. The same word, philos torgos, I think. One of you Greek scholars, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. Philos torgos, is that right? Torgos, one or the other. Either way, it's the masculine, right? And I think that's masculine plural, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong. But it applies to them. Love them. Be affectionate toward them. And it signifies an affectionate regard which every Christian should feel for another as a member of the same body. It comes from the root word philos, which literally means a friend, a companion, or one of the bridegroom's friends. And in that day, the bridegroom's friend could be the man who went for the bridegroom and on his behalf and requested the bride's hand in marriage for him. And he would also do other special things for him leading up to the wedding. So today we might call that the best man, but I don't know if I'd ask the best man to ask my wife to marry me, am I right? But that kind of correlates to the best man. So it's a good friend, a close friend, a very close friend, you know. So that's what this word philos means. It's referring to those kind of relationships. Any comments anybody has, please help me. Danny? Yeah, that's right. Friends, yeah, that's right. There's a friend that sticks closer to a brother. Who said that? Solomon?
I think it may be Proverbs, Brenda's saying.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think Solomon said that.
A brother is born
Yeah.
for adversity, but there's a friend that's sticking close to the brother, and something like that.
Yeah, well, Solomon said that, but he's the wisest man, and he knows until Christ came, right? So we talked about be kind of affection. There's another reference in here, in honor, giving preference to one another. So let's consider what does mean in honor. That's the Greek word, looks like time, but it's time. And it's not the word from which we get our word time. That's an old English word that's spelled T-Y-M-E that referred to the tides. Have you heard of evening tide, noon tide? That measured the periods of occurrences during the day, and so that led to our measuring of time, at least those of us who were from the British Isles, I guess. So it refers to dignity itself in this passage. Honor which one has by reason of rank or position which he holds. So we're looking at one another, and we're supposed to show honor to each other by reason of our position. And what position is that?
Servant.
Well, servant, brother, a child of Christ. What greater position can you have than that, right? So, in honor giving preference, in Acts 28, verse 1 through 10, here's an example of honor that people showed. And you guys remember this event. After the shipwreck, when all were safe, they found themselves in Malta. And on this island, after surviving the shipwreck, they were gathering wood to put on a fire, and Paul was bitten by a snake. Well, immediately their response is, he's a murderer. Look, justice was served. He's going to die for his crimes. Then he shook the snake off, and they said, he's a god. So their opinion changed quickly. Paul was then taken to a house of the chief man on the island, or a chief man on the island named Publius. And while there, he heals his sick father. After that, he and those with him honored them in many ways. And that's the honor that, you know, that same word, honor there, is the same word we just read in the other passage. So they were respectful of Paul after that event. They thought a lot of Paul and those with him. And so they honored them and did many things for them because of that. So I guess that seems, if we're gonna do that, then we're gonna honor one another and do many things for one another when necessary, right? We're gonna show that kind of love. What do you guys think? Oh, I'm sure you agree. In the MEV, well, this is the modern English version, I'll read, this is be devoted to one another with brotherly love, to prefer one another in honor. Because this Greek word actually means, as far as preference goes, and the Greek word, pronounce that for me, Dave. Dave, in the Greek, proe geomai, is that right? Proe geomai, something along that lines. It means to go before and show the way. That's literally what that means. In preference, lead the way. Be respectful, and by being respectful and demonstrating those respectful attitudes toward one another, then we show that to others and show that to the person to whom we're being respectful. It says here, showing mutual respect and honor, striving to excel, not to see which could confer the most honor, but could confer most or manifest the most respect. So that's an attitude. That's this Romans 12, verse 10. That's right. I thought I was going to say 10, and I thought, man, I've sort of doubted myself. That's the very idea that's being given in this passage. 1 Peter 1, verse 22, and I've just put B, he uses this word, Philadelphia, in sincere love of the brethren, love one another fervently with a pure heart. So we have two loves in this passage. One is the Philadelphia love, our brotherly love, brotherly kindness. The other one is agape love. And we do it fervently. Of course, we can look at the definition of the word fervently in this passage too, which doesn't mean maybe what you think it means. It means don't stop. Continue doing this. Agapeo is translated, means to welcome, to entertain, to be fond, to love dearly. Agapao does in this passage, and that's derived from agape. I think, was agape the root word for that, Dave? Or just another suffix of the word, same word, right? The verb form, okay. So this is the verb form. So it's telling you in agapeo. I'm glad we got a Greek scholar here. But it literally means to welcome, to entertain, to be fond of, to love dearly. And when Jesus applies this passage, sometimes it's difficult to do, because this applies to the fact of loving someone despite what they do, despite who they are. That's not easy to do. The Greek word for fervently is ektenos. Ektenos, right? And it modifies that word, the verb word for love there, the action word, and it's translated as earnestly or intensely. It's also been used to do without ceasing, and that was in we find in Acts 12 verse 5 when the disciples or those disciples in the church were praying fervently for Peter all night because he was in prison, and James had just been beheaded, and they were obviously concerned that Peter was about to be beheaded as well. So we have this same word, ektenos, in Acts 12 verse 5, and it's the only other time this word's used in the New Testament that I can find. Dave, you can correct me, but that's the only two times I can find that this word was used. And the ending, the suffix, it's the same word, but the suffix is slightly different, because in the case of Acts 12 verse 5, it applies in the direction of a singular person, Peter in prison. Ektenos applies to doing this for our brethren, for them. Then to brotherly kindness add love, and this word agape is when it appears here in this passage. Agape is shown holy as God's divine nature, 1 John 4, verse 48. Somebody want to turn and read that? Maybe someone could quote it for us. I'm sure there are those who can quote this passage here.
He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love.
God is love. So love here, that's agape. That's the same word. God is agape. And if we consider the definition of agape, it's virtually impossible really to define agape without understanding God's love. A love that is unconditional. And that's what agape is, unconditional love. Now, anybody here wants to correct me, I may, maybe wrong about some things, but, let me know. But that's what I've studied and that's what I've learned about agape. Romans 5, verse 8 and 10, but God demonstrates his own love toward us. That while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And then again, in verse 10, he said, for if while we were enemies. So we were enemies of God, enemies of Christ. We were sinners, alienated from God. But God had a plan. And because of his agape love, his nature, his unconditional love, he sent his only begotten Son to this earth to die for us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth him shall not perish. Did I quote that properly, correctly? I see it a lot at ball games, John 3:16. But I used to. I don't know if we see that much anymore even. But in 1 Corinthians 1, verse 13, we find the chapter that we all recognize as the chapter of love, the chapter on love. And in every instance that the word, I said work, that should be work. Every use of the word love is agape love, unconditional love. And how does he describe that? Agape suffers long and is kind. Agape envies not. Agape flaunts not itself, is not puffed up, does not behave itself unseemly or improperly, seeks not its own, is not easily provoked, thinks no evil, rejoices not in iniquity, but rejoices in truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Agape. It's not easy to love your enemies, is it? That guy that cut you off in traffic. What's your first thought? That jerk. Yeah. Yeah, but we still have to love him. We have to love him in the agape way, right? And that's hard to do. Someone breaks into your home while you're not there and steals everything you've got or steals those very precious things you have. What are your thoughts about that person? Man, I wish they'd catch him and hang him from the tallest tree, right? No, we're supposed to love this guy or this person, whoever it is, unconditionally. Man, that's hard to do. But you have a hard time not keeping these thoughts out of your mind when things happen to you. But as Christians, we've got to learn every day to work harder and harder at doing that which is very, very hard to do. But it is. It's very hard to do. Anybody want to talk about some of these attributes of love, of agape? Add something to this? Now, we could spend a whole class just talking about a couple of those, right? I may run out of time in this. If we do, I'm going to expect a lot of comments at the end of this lesson. Brenda?
We have a friend in Lithia Springs, and her son was killed by 4 young men. They were at like a party to celebrate good grades for this graduating senior, and it became out of control. And a girl slapped one of the 4 boys. And he said the next person doing that, they were able to gain evidence. But her son died. And she could have taken that and been very, very bitter. Danny was there during the whole trial. But she had nothing but love for the parents of those 4 boys, because she said, I not only lost my son, they lost theirs too. And they were, one of them was a football player for Alabama. And his mother got on TV and said, my son would never do that. He's too handsome to do things like that. But yet, Monique continued to love those people. And even now, she has taken all of that. It's been, what, about 10 years? And she still has that love. And you look at her and you think, how could she love? But she has the love of Christ
That's
in her.
Very true.
Her name, Juanita Lawrence,
The grandmother is.
so, yeah, the grandmother, so. They, do things like on Christmas morning, going down into the city of Atlanta and feeding the homeless and stuff like that. Actually, Brenda and I go with them,
Really?
but the whole family, you know, they're not bitter about it. They decided to turn that tragedy into love and service. It's difficult to do,
Yeah, that's amazing.
but, you
I don't know
know,
if everybody heard this. Did everybody hear what Danny River said? You have to admire this Christian woman. And she certainly deserves to be honored, you know, for her being so Christ-like in her behavior. That'd be hard for any parent. I don't know what my reaction would have been. I couldn't tell you. I would like to think I would have reacted the same way she did. But she showed true compassion for those parents. And that's true agape love. That's a great example of agape love, when it's very hard to do. So that was one example. We were looking at this, the examples to demonstrate Philadelphia or agape love. How about an example that will demonstrate our Philadelphia or brotherly love or brotherly kindness to one another? Somebody have an example of that? Something that may have happened? I could probably think of several. I was hoping some of you guys might talk about it.
Could it be treat everyone right?
Well, treat everyone right, yeah.
Treat everybody right,
Yeah,
regardless of the circumstances. You
Yeah.
treat them well.
yeah. But that's more agape than Philadelphia. Philadelphia love because of who they are. And I know that there's people here in this congregation who've helped others within this congregation financially. Help them with bringing food to them at times, you know, a death in the family or something. All of these are examples of brotherly kindness and brotherly love when we do those kinds of things for one another. And this congregation, I think, is one of the most loving congregations I've ever attended. Kind. And it's not always easy when you have to deal with people like me, but you're very kind and very loving.
you are kind and benevolent, Dennis.
Well, thank you for saying that. I don't know that everyone would agree with that, but I appreciate it. So, we're reading 1 Peter 5, verse 5. Likewise, you younger people, submit to your elders. Yes, all of you, be submissive to one another, and be clothed in humility, for God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. I think this passage is a passage that requires, to a great extent, agape love. Not only Philadelphia, but agape. Because there are times when it's not easy to be submissive to one another, is it? To submit to one another puts, as Philippians 2 verse 5 said, others before myself. Their needs, their concerns, their fears, to be considerate and think of it and be submissive in that way. That's not easy. But that's what we're asked to do if we're going to have agape love. Ephesians 4 verse 1 through 3 is also a great example, ending with bearing with one another in love. That bearing with one another in love, what does that mean, bearing with one another?
Being supportive,
So,
supporting one another.
well, being supportive, but I think it goes beyond that. I didn't pull the Greek out in this, Dave. Maybe you could help me with this. But I think that word probably has more to do with patient endurance, doesn't it? So we patiently endure. So patient endurance is one of the things, one of the Christian virtues we add. When he said, add to your faith, virtue, knowledge, temperance, patience. That word patience actually means patient endurance. Patiently enduring. Whatever situation we're in, whatever problem may arise, being patient with one another in an enduring way, which means when it's not easy.
I was gonna say, that type from Ephesians 4 would be, we may love each other,
Yeah,
but things happen that you don't necessarily like.
that's right.
When you don't like, the forbearing comes in, or if you don't, it blows up.
Yeah,
You know, I'll go my way, you go yours, you know, that's what happens when that kind of type of love is not there.
that's true.
Dennis,
Yes.
I was at a ladies' day one time, and the speaker said forbearing means to put up with.
Put up with, that's right. Put up with, that's a good point. Trying to think of something my son said at one time, and now my mind's just going blank. But he often gives me good examples of lessons he's heard or something he's taught, and when he was in school or heard somebody preach, and makes me stop and think too. But
This version says showing tolerance.
showing tolerance, absolutely, and that's the same thing, right? Showing tolerance, enduring patiently, putting up with. It's the way we would say it in this part of the country, right? I'm going to put up with you. But that's what a lot of times mothers have to do, right? They put up with their children so they don't kill them. But all right.
Brother Dennis, you have to exercise all that control when you pull a camper through Atlanta.
Oh, I bet. I bet. I just drive through Atlanta is hard enough. I can't imagine pulling a camper
Yeah,
through Atlanta.
when you're running near the speed limit and someone else is running 15 mile per hour faster and they go from the left lane and then they exit.
They exit all the way across 3 lanes to get in front of you.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you've ever driven in Atlanta, you've seen that, I know. People cross 3 lanes to get an exit in front of you. And you don't always have kind of thoughts when that happens, but we're supposed to love them, right?
Hey, didn't they also say using a blinker in Atlanta is a sign of weakness?
Oh, is that right? You know what the turn signal is, right? It's the original instant messenger. For you young people, the turn signal is the original instant messenger. And so people can immediately know, oh, yeah, he's about to slow down or stop, and maybe he's going to hit his brakes. And that's why they made it a law. Use your turn signal. I don't know if I have another slide here. I think that's it. So if there's any other comments, anybody want to give any other examples, I would appreciate it.
But if you ever did an investigation how the turn signal was brought about,
No, I haven't.
look it up. I'm gonna spoil it for you. Look it up.
Oh, okay. Danny said look up how the turn signal came about. I'm sure it was a result of a bad accident or something. Just like a lot of traffic lights are installed in certain intersections, right? But, I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. Huh?
About the couple that adopted the boy that murdered their son.
When did this happen?
They visited him in the
Several
jail.
years ago.
Huh?
That happened several years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's happened a long time ago. They visited the boy that killed their son in prison. He begged their forgiveness. They had to forgive him because they were Christians. Wound up feeling so sorry for the young man that adopted him,
That same young man in prison?
the one who murdered their son.
Wow.
Studied with him and he became a Christian.
And he became a Christian while he was in prison, and they adopted him. Now, that's amazing. That's an amazing example of agape love. That's about as unconditional as I can imagine.
Sometimes we see people misunderstanding and misusing these attitudes and ideas of Christians as well. Years ago, we knew a family who lost a little boy because they were rear-ended by a drunk driver. It was his third offense, and he had already hurt some people before. And when he was being sentenced, the lawyer got up, his defense lawyer got up and was talking to the family of who lost the little boy, and was telling them, if you were Christians, really Christians, you'd forgive him. And they gave the grandfather a moment to speak, and he said, if the man was truly penitent, we would be more than willing to forgive. But he's not showing any repentance. He's done this multiple times, and the judge ended up putting the man in prison for the longest term he could, for being a repeat offender.
Right.
We are to bear with, and we are
Yeah.
to be giving and serving. But that's also something that the world sees sometimes and abuses.
Well, that's true. They will. And I think Valerie was here one time talking about, you know, you can't just let people and abuse you in a sense that they're, you know, going to hurt you. Even Jesus, and was it Luke? Luke 9 or John 10? When he was on his way to, I'm trying to think. No, it may have been Matthew 23. I'm thinking of where the disciples, or James and John, wanted to call down fire from heaven for someone who had been offensive or been offensive to the Christ, Jesus, whom they knew to be the Son of God. And Jesus said, no, don't have that spirit. For the Son of Man did not come to kill, but to save, right? And so he's our ultimate example in this, on how to do that. But there was a time also when he was going to go into, was it Samaria? That was the event where they want to call down fire from heaven. Well, I'm trying to think of the other one. He said maybe it's in John 9. Let's see. Find it. So John 10. Yeah, when the Jews were taking up stones to stone him, Jesus answered, I have shown you many good works from my Father, for which all these works do you stone me? The Jews answered him, we are not stoning you for good works, but for blasphemy, and because you, being a man, claim to be God. And then Jesus answered them, and he gave him a lengthy or a defense following. And again they tried to seize him, but he escaped from their hands. So even Jesus would slip away, get away. He didn't stay there and allow someone to abuse him in that situation. So that doesn't mean that we have to stand up and be abused or suffer abuse. That's not what this is meaning by agape love. Agape love is, they're trying to hurt me, I'm going to get away, but I want them to do the right thing and hope they will repent someday and do better, right? I hope they're the best. I don't hope they go to hell. I'm not going to wish that they go to hell for their actions, for what they're doing. I hope they repent. And that would be more of the agape, right, attitude toward that. You're not going to stay there and suffer abuse, especially if those show no signs of repenting and not throwing the stones.
Agape love doesn't always mean showing emotion either. It's just wanting the best for them.
That's right, yeah. You hope the best for them. You desire the best for them. You know.
John 3:16, agape love, for God so loved the world he gave his only begotten Son.
Yes. perfect example of it, of agape love, unconditional love. He had that love for us. Anybody else want to give an example of either brotherly love or agape love? This is what Keith wanted us to do, and I've tried to do this in this class, have us discuss how we would respond, how we would react, or an example of how we've responded, how we react. And if you can think of one, share it. That's the first bell, so we've got a few more minutes here.
I have a good example of filial love.
Okay.
We were at my dad's memorial service 750 miles away, but this church, this congregation made sure we had food 750 miles away. We had to go pick it up at Walmart, but that's no big deal. But that's the kind of love that we need to be showing to one another. You know, way far away, but yet this congregation made sure my family ate well.
We love you, Bob, Lois, and I didn't write the check, but the elders made that decision, but I know this congregation loves, and especially the elders, love all the members of this congregation. I almost had to call Lance and ask him to teach this class for me this morning. I was up all night with a stomach problem, and barely made it out the door this morning, but I'm better, I'm feeling better. If I seem a little bit unprepared, it's because of a lack of sleep, I guess, last night.
Okay.
But we can dismiss early, I suppose. No sense in staying up here if I have nothing else to teach you. And it's not me that's teaching you, it's the message that comes from God's Word.